Hello, good morning, and welcome to lecture number 13 in our course on project stakeholder management. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about the stakeholder governance model. It's a 5-step model which I have developed, and for the rest of this course we will be looking at various aspects of this model, particularly the methodological aspects of project stakeholder management and engagement. So moving on now, and before I come to the model itself, I would just like to show you here this illustration which I have developed to show how the interfacing takes place between stakeholders at the project level and the organizational level, as well as the external environmental level, that is the environment external to the organization. There are 3 levels which I would first like to look at briefly with you. One is the project level, one is the organizational level, which is above the project level, and then there is the organization's external environment, that is the next level. So if you look at this illustration over here, you can see here at the bottom of the slide there is this blue box over here, project management knowledge framework, and this is the framework to which projects refer to when they are being undertaken. The project management knowledge framework consists of various standards, various methodologies, bodies of knowledge. There are 2 types of standards, bodies of knowledge and methodologies. One are the so-called off-the-shelf bodies of knowledge, standards and methodologies. These are those which have been developed by professional organizations and which are readily available, such as the PMBOK from the PMI, Prince2 from the UK, very popular in Europe, IPMA from that organization, the International Project Management Association, which I had talked about in one of the previous classes, APMBOK from the Association of Project Managers based in the UK, which I had also briefly referred to, and they have their own body of knowledge, P2M, which is Japanese, and BS6079, which is also from the United Kingdom. So there are various off-the-shelf bodies of knowledge, standards and methodologies which one can refer to when one is doing projects, and specifically or mostly one uses PMI, but as I said, in Europe Prince2 is also very popular, and these over here are also gaining in popularity. In addition to these off-the-shelf bodies of knowledge, standards and methodologies, there are also those which have been developed in-house by various organizations, public sector organizations, commercial organizations, non-governmental organizations. They have developed their own standards, their own methodologies, their own bodies of knowledge with regards to project management. And all of these standards over here, some more than others, they also contain information on how to manage and engage stakeholders. Next to the bodies of knowledge, I have put this box over here to illustrate that every project has got various dimensions, such as the scope dimension, which leads to the goal of the project, the cost dimension, which is of course on every project, the time or scheduling dimension, which you have on every project, risk dimension, quality dimension, procurement dimension, human resources dimension, communications dimension, stakeholders dimension, of course. So there are all these different dimensions, and to one extent or the other, all of them find some reference here in these bodies of knowledge, standards and methodologies to which projects refer to. So whatever project it is, there is always some reference to stakeholders through these bodies of knowledge, standards and methodologies. This is the project level over here. If you go up here to this yellow box with this big black arrow in it, all this represents the organization which is conducting or which is undertaking the projects. Now this organization can be, as I said, a public sector organization, some ministry, some agency, some government department. It can be a commercial private organization, some corporation, making products, making services, whatever. It can be a non-governmental organization, not-for-profit organization, any organization. And every organization also has its parameters. Every organization has, or should have, a mission, goals, objectives, strategies, priorities, program and project portfolio, a project organization, resource basis, competency, experience, culture, policies, project focus, knowledge, process, informational, institutional, and infrastructural assets. Well, in order to do projects, in order to do programs, one needs all these ingredients here, which are provided by the organization. One needs resources, one needs expertise, one needs competency, one has to have a direction, which is reflecting the projects and the programs. And all this has a very heavy stakeholder relation here. It's the stakeholders, the top management, senior management, for example, who set the mission, long-term goals and objectives of the organization, who decide the strategies, who decide the priorities, who select the portfolios, who provide the resources, who develop or who recruit the competency, who make up the culture, who make up the policies, and who develop and deliver all these different assets over here, whether they are process assets or informational assets or infrastructural assets. These are all stakeholders. They, within the organization, they provide all this in order that projects and programs can be undertaken. So even if it's a very small project, it is embedded in a very complex institutional system. The system which has to make sure that the inputs are there in order for the project to be completed. And it's really the stakeholders within the organization at different levels who have to provide all these inputs so that the projects and the programs can be undertaken. In this section of the slide over here, all these red buttons with the yellow writing, all this represents the organization's external environment. And I'd also pointed out earlier in one class that environment can be very complex, and you have all kinds of areas like economic sphere, financial sphere, political sphere, social sphere, regulatory sphere, security sphere, infrastructure sphere, market sphere, human resources sphere, other resources, and. All organizations are embedded in this very complex environment. And here, if you look at it, you can see again, they're all different types of stakeholders. For example, the political environment. Well, it should be obvious, what kind of stakeholders are there, or the social environment, or the legal, or the regulatory environment, or the security environment. Think about very hostile stakeholders who are very much against your projects or programs in certain parts of Pakistan these last few years. If you look at the human resources, if you look at the markets, if it's commercial projects, the markets which are there, the suppliers and the vendors and so forth. So there's a very large community of stakeholders over here. There is a community of stakeholders over here, and of course there is a community of stakeholders over here. So you have all these interfacing points between different sets, different communities of stakeholders. So the whole purpose of this is just to show you that stakeholder management and engagement, it can be very complex. You have to see, for example, stakeholders down here, they have to see that they are managing the stakeholders here properly, so that they get their inputs, they get their support, what they need in order to successfully undertake their projects or their programs. In the same way, one has to keep a close eye on the stakeholders over here in the environment of the organization, because their behaviors, their actions, the changes which are taking place here with regards to stakeholders can have quite a significant impact on the organization, which in turn can have a significant impact on the projects and programs which is undertaken. So it's this broader, holistic from whole, more comprehensive perspective of stakeholders one has to take when one is thinking systematically about stakeholder management and engagement. So, moving on now, I would like to introduce to you the 5-step governance model for managing and engaging project stakeholders, which I've developed. This 5-step governance model consists of 5 components, 5 different steps. They are not to be seen in the sense that you do one step and then you do the next step, and when you've done the next step you do the next step, and when you've done the next step you do the next step. It's not like that. These are 5 steps which are, or 5 areas rather, which are sort of running parallel to each other. In order to properly manage and engage your project stakeholders, you have to have all these 5 steps in place. Now these 5 steps are institutional, directional, instrumental, technical, and educational. Now what does this all mean? Well, already the names, the words, they already give you some indication as to what this is all about. Institutional means at the institutional level, having the systems in place which can facilitate, which can help promote adequate, appropriate project stakeholder management and engagement. And we'll be coming to that in a second. Directional means setting the direction of how one is going to manage and engage project stakeholders. It's a lot about policies for managing and engaging stakeholders. It's also about strategies, the direction one is going to manage and engage your stakeholders. This step, instrumental, what this basically means is the methodology, the tools which one is using in order to manage and engage project stakeholders. So this is really where you could say the bulk of the technical work comes in, which I put under the project stakeholder management and engagement process framework. It's a whole framework of processes, technical processes, which I will introduce later on in this lecture. Then you have the technical step. The technical step, this is basically, as it indicates, the technical infrastructure which one needs in order to manage and engage project stakeholders. And as I pointed out also in one of the previous classes, managing and engaging stakeholders could require quite a bit of information. One has to collect this information, one has to store this information, one has to process this information, and one needs certain technical facilities in order to do that. For example, a project stakeholder information and communication system. This would all come under the technical step of project stakeholder management and engagement. And then here finally, last but of course not least, the educational step of project stakeholder management and engagement. Project stakeholder management and engagement is something which, it's a new area, as I have pointed out quite a number of times. There is awareness also, of course, which we have also seen, but there is not always the sort of the knowledge and the insights are not always there how to properly manage and engage project stakeholders. And this is where the educational step comes in, or the educational component. It will provide you or equip you with the knowledge, with the insights which you need in order to systematically manage and engage your project stakeholders. So this is the 5-step governance model. What I want to do is first I just want to talk briefly about this step over here. This is the institutional step, with the overall institutional framework, which, as you could say, is right at the top of stakeholder management and engagement. Everything springs from that, basically. Well, creating an institutional framework, project stakeholder management and engagement obviously needs to be taken very seriously, as I pointed out. I had shown you some of the project performance surveys, which indicate that main cause of project failure, quote unquote, because the term project failure is open to a lot of debate, but the main cause of project failure is not so much the technical side or the failure to properly manage the technical side, but it's really a failure to manage and engage one's stakeholders. So project stakeholder management and engagement needs to be taken seriously. How would you do that? Well, first of all, you have to set an example. You have to give a signal that yes, you understand that stakeholder management and engagement is very important. And as an expression of this importance, you set up an institutional framework which will be the basis for helping facilitate stakeholder management and engagement. For example, an institutional support framework, which could be, let's say, a committee or a commission, created specifically and permanently for this as the first step at the organizational level, and with direct access to top-level management, demonstrates commitment and can help a lot. It's very important that there should be this top-level involvement, top-level management involvement. Why? Because leadership starts at the top and it permeates down. And one has to show that the top level, the leadership, the senior-most leadership of an organization, whatever organization it is, really understands the importance of stakeholder management and engagement and is determined to ensure that it is done in the best possible manner in their organizations. And of course, actions speak louder than words. One can say what one wants, but unless one backs up one's words with some specific actions, then it's really not going to bring about much change, much positive change or much good. And that is why there has to be a high-level organ, which could be, as I said, a committee, for example, which is specifically meant for this purpose, which is there permanently and which specifically looks at project stakeholder management and engagement in the organization. Now, this committee, what could it do? Project stakeholder management and engagement is a very large subject area, and there has to be some sort of functions which this committee has to perform. Of course, we would not like it to be overburdened. It's not there to micromanage, definitely not. It's not the function of this committee. Function of this committee is to create the framework in order to facilitate stakeholder management and engagement. How could it do that? What functions could it take on? Well, this committee on its own, or perhaps through a set of subcommittees, even more specialized subcommittees, which are looking at very, very specific aspects of the subject, it could perform various functions. And some of those I have given over here, my suggestions. Such a committee could develop the principles of stakeholder management and engagement, which are applicable for all projects, for all programs which are being undertaken within that organization. Could also develop the policies of stakeholder management and engagement, as well as the strategy. It could provide some guidance, not going into the mechanics, but it could provide some overall guidance as to how strategies can be formulated at the project or program level. Standards and best practices. This is something which is very important. There have to be references available. What is the best way of doing things? Every project is different. Every program also is different. It has its own unique inputs. It has its own unique experiences, lessons learned. It's quite possible that from 10 different projects you get 10 very different lessons learned. And out of these lessons learned, then you can develop your best practices and you can develop your standards, which are helping facilitate your projects, which are reducing risk, which are increasing efficiency, and so forth. So one of the functions of this committee could be to develop standards and best practices based on inputs collected with regards to managing and engaging stakeholders on different projects and programs. This could be a focal point for collecting information and coming up with some kind of a system over there. This committee could also decide on what kind of technical infrastructure is needed, again, based on inputs from different programs and projects and project managers and teams and lessons learned reports and so forth. What kind of technical infrastructure is needed. Education and training. This committee could also decide, you know, or provide some guidance on how much education and training should be provided. Maybe the organization can set up its own training program in stakeholder management and engagement, or maybe it can identify external consultants, for instance, who could provide such education and training. Research and evaluation. Commissioning such research and evaluation is very important, and it also overlaps with some of the other functions which I have mentioned here, for example, standards and best practices, because you get some idea about standards and best practices on the basis of research and evaluation into stakeholder management and engagement, which is undertaken by the organization. Another possible function of this committee could be to have oversight, as well as discuss grievances of stakeholders, major grievances which might be arising as a result of the organization's projects and programs, whether they are internal stakeholders or external stakeholders. It's important that there should be someone who can listen to grievances. There's a whole area of management, it's called grievance management. And depending on the way in which grievances are handled or managed, that can also say a lot about the level of commitment of the organization, and also it can, if it's done properly, then it can also greatly help facilitate projects. And finally, another suggestion for a function which this committee could have, perhaps administrative support as well as financial support. Okay, stakeholder management and engagement, it does cost. Resources are required, not only at the specific project level, at the specific program level, but also for setting up the infrastructure, the technical infrastructure which is shared between projects and programs. All this has a cost attached to it, and that is why finances, a certain budget has to be allocated for that, and this is also where this committee could decide or set some guidelines as to how much financial support can be extended for managing and engaging stakeholders. So you can see there's quite a large number of functions which are given over here, and one can also add to them. These are those which came straight to my mind, you know, but as I said, it's not complete, and these are some of the main things. You can add your own which you may come up along with. That was regarding the institutional step. Now we go to the, over here, the directional step. This is where we talk about policies and strategies. And policies and strategies are basically setting the direction in which one is going. And commitment at the highest level is needed for project stakeholder management and engagement activities to work. This is what I already pointed out, that, you know, leadership starts at the top. You have to set the example at the highest level. If the head of the organization, whether it's a CEO, whether it's a minister, whether it's an agency director, or whether it's the head of some non-governmental organization, whatever, at this level, already there has to be a signaling that there is a commitment for project stakeholder management and engagement. We are, as an organization, we as employees of that organization are committed to working with and for our project stakeholders. Well, how can you do that? Well, first of all, you could have something in writing. As I said, actions speak louder than words. Words can be spoken, words can be written, but one first has to have something which one can refer to. And this could be, for example, a written and meticulously observed policy and strategy framework for dealing with project stakeholders is an expression of such commitment. Some organizations have developed and are implementing these. So some organizations, they have developed their own policies, their own strategies, they have formulated them, they have written them down, and these documents are referred to by their projects when they are managing and engaging their stakeholders. And I brought one example along. It's a very good example from a company which a few years ago was acquired by another company. It's a Canadian company, or was a Canadian company, well, still is, but the name has changed now, Petro-Canada. Petro-Canada, they have a very good stakeholder and community engagement policy, and they also, in their projects, they're in the energy field, they have traditionally been working very closely with their stakeholders, their secondary stakeholders, local communities, for instance. And later on in this course, I will be going over some very good examples with you. But what I want to do right now is I want to look at this policy document over here. This is Petro-Canada policies, and the topic of this here is stakeholder and community engagement policy. Now what I want to do is I just want to call it up, and we want to go over it. You can see here this whole thing is just one page. This whole policy document is just one page, which is good because it's concise. It's easy to refer to. You know, it's more difficult to refer to page after page after page. You can read it. It just takes maybe about 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes to read it carefully. And then it's written in such a way, it's formulated in such a way that it's easy to understand and it's very clear. It doesn't get lost in ambiguities. When you read it, you know very exactly where this company stands with regards to managing and engaging its stakeholders. And I will go over it now. The stakeholder engagement policy of Petro-Canada, which was dated June 2007. So it's relatively recent, and it has been approved by the President and Chief Executive Officer of the company, which is also good because it shows that there is some commitment that it is considered important enough to be passed on to the President and Chief Executive Officer for his consideration and for signing. Now the policy reads as follows. Petro-Canada is a responsible company and is committed to establishing and fostering supportive, collaborative, and mutually beneficial relationships with stakeholders in all its operational areas. This includes, but is not limited to, communities, landowners, Aboriginal and Indigenous peoples, labor, regulators, non-governmental organizations, and other stakeholders who affect and/or could be affected by Petro-Canada's activities, products or services, and associated performance. So already a large number of stakeholders are given over here. There is talk about mutually beneficial relationships, you know, like win-win solutions, supportive, collaborative. The thing is, they are talking here about its operational areas in which it is operating, doing projects, and after the projects have been completed, operating the outcome of those projects. Continuing over here, it says, states Petro-Canada will work proactively with stakeholders to build mutual trust and respectful relationships. To establish and maintain these relationships, Petro-Canada will act in a constructive, consistent, and principled manner in our interaction with stakeholders, demonstrating our integrity as a business. Strive to be sensitive to local social and cultural factors in the communities where we operate. Demonstrate a reasonable level of flexibility to stakeholders and use appropriate mechanisms for engagement to ensure that Petro-Canada understands their needs, concerns, and expectations. Endeavor to be transparent and provide stakeholders with accurate and relevant information to facilitate dialogue, understanding of issues, and the development of solutions throughout the life cycle of our activities. Consult with and provide our stakeholders with an understanding of our intentions, plans, and activities to help them make informed decisions in their relationship with the company. Actively listen to stakeholders and be open to incorporating their ideas. Respond to input from stakeholders in a timely and appropriate manner, informing them of the actions we will take in response to their concerns. endeavor to work with our stakeholders to identify and put in place meaningful community benefits, and continually improve and refine the stakeholder engagement process to ensure alignment with the changing business environment. So there are a lot of factors over here which I had all pointed out in previous classes, which one has to do in order to properly manage and engage your project stakeholders. There is talk about consistency, principles, sensitivity to local conditions, flexibility, understanding needs, concerns, expectation, transparency, accuracy and relevancy of information, dialogue, consultation, listening, which is a very important form of communication, responding to stakeholders, informing them of actions, working with stakeholders to identify and put in place community benefits, and continuously improving and refining the engagement process, making it better and better and better. So these are all elements of a very good stakeholder policy, and which this company, which I have also found out through my other sources, has been doing quite a good job with regards to its stakeholders. This policy applies to all Petro-Canada activities wherever we operate. It's not only in Canada, it's also in other countries. Petro-Canada's business unit and shared services leaders are responsible for the implementation of this policy in their specific areas of responsibility. So there's also assignment of responsibility, which is also good, so that later on people can't say, well, I didn't know, and no one told me, and I didn't think I was responsible, and they are the ones responsible, and they're the ones responsible. There is also indication of responsibility over here. Upholding these commitments to external relations is a responsibility of all employees and contractors. Also follows from what I had said in an earlier class, that stakeholder management is not just the responsibility of one person, like the project manager or the project team, but it's responsibility of everyone which is involved on a project. The President and Chief Executive Officer is responsible for the approval, regular review, and interpretation of this policy, and for providing the resources required for the continual improvement and implementation of policy commitments. So there you have it in a nutshell. It's just one page, but this one page is very concise, very clear, and it really gives you a very good sort of a guideline on how to proceed with regards to managing and engaging stakeholders on the projects which this company is undertaking. This was the best example I found in my research, and I thought, I should share it with you, this one-page document. So now you get an idea. This was the directional component, having a proper policy and a strategy framework. A strategy would be going even more than a policy. A strategy would be having more details to it and giving some indication of how one would really go about it in more detail. Well, what I want to do next is to look at the instrumental framework. And this is this slide which I have prepared for you over here. Now, this is the third step, whereby, remember, the steps are not, like 1, 2, 3, 4, but they're all steps which are in parallel with each other. The project stakeholder management and engagement process framework. Now, this I have put over here in this sort of button over here, and you can see that there are a large number, or well, not such a large number, there are 5 different process areas which are contained within this process framework. And these areas, these processes, they follow in sequence. That is why you have these red arrows over here. You have the first process area, which is basically understanding the project context. This is followed by the second process area, which is identification of all project stakeholders. Then you have got here the third area, process area, which is analysis of the stakeholders and evaluation of their impact on the project. Then you have here the fourth process area, which is designing a stakeholder management and engagement strategy. Then you have got the fifth process area over here, which is implementing a stakeholder management and engagement strategy. So you have got these 5 process areas over here, which are proceeding in sequence. Now, it's a little bit more complicated than that. I mean, yes, they do proceed in sequence, but they are not static. They can change over time. And this is where you have the element of monitoring, evaluation, and control, which I have put in this yellow box over here. Because you see, when you're identifying project stakeholders, as I said, stakeholders, they are dynamic. It's not only that their behaviors and expectations, etc., change, but also the actual stakeholders of the project can change over time. They might have a stakeholder today who is not a stakeholder a few days down the line. And then maybe a few weeks down the line, you have a new stakeholder who was not there at the beginning. So there has to be this constant sort of review element taking place with regards to identification, with regards to analysis, with regards to impact evaluation, with regards to strategy design and strategy implementation. And that is where monitoring, evaluation, and control comes in. This is just like in any normal project life cycle. You have also monitoring, evaluation, control taking place. Well, it's the same over here. All these 4 process groups, they also have to be monitored, evaluated, controlled. The context also sometimes, but not so much. The main focus of monitoring, evaluation, and control would be in these 4 process groups. Now, again, if you look at this process framework over here, you can see that in addition to periodic revision and modification when and where appropriate, which is MEC, there are also some boxes which I have drawn here on the right side. This box over here indicates the influencing factors for this process framework. There are factors which influence these processes. And what are these factors? Well, they are internal and external factors. Laws, for instance. Is there a law, example, which would say that you have got to identify all your project stakeholders, or you have got to identify your key project stakeholders? To my knowledge, there is no such law, but let's suppose there was. That would then be an external factor which would have to be taken into consideration over here. Another external factor would be then the culture of the society or the environment, the politics, and so forth. All these could have some form of impact, direct or indirect, on all these process areas. More important are the internal factors. Internal means internal to the project, internal to the program, internal to the organization which is undertaking those projects or programs. And these internal factors could be like principles and policies, something which I have just gone over regarding Petro-Canada. They have their policies which state that, yes, stakeholders are very important, and we attach a very high intensity or a very high value to our stakeholders, and we want to manage them, we want to engage them, we want to work together with them, we want to support them, etc., etc. Well, if you have sort of policies like that and principles like that, of course, they will have an impact on these process areas. When you say you're very supportive of your stakeholders and you want to work together with them, you want to get their input in your project, and you want to provide them incentives or something, well, all that has to be considered over here, for instance, when you are designing your management and engagement strategy. What kind of incentives you're going to provide, or what kind of communication patterns are you going to have with your stakeholders? How much are you going to interact with them? How much are you going to take the feedback or input from them, etc., etc. All this would then find their sort of input over here in this engagement strategies and designing these strategies and implementing these strategies. So you have here the internal factors, principles, policies, experience. Experience is very important. You might have had sort of not very good experience with managing your stakeholders on one project, and now you have learned from that experience. You know that, okay, well, in the previous projects we tried these and these methods and they didn't really work, so we will be very careful this time. We will maybe not apply them, or we will apply them in a very small manner, things like that. Information, like how much information is available on your stakeholders. When you're trying to identify them, you have to have information. Who are the potential stakeholders? You have to go around sometimes and look for this information. Very important, the role of information when you're analyzing your stakeholders and evaluating their impact on the project. When you're designing your strategies, implementing your strategies, you need information. How much of this information is there? How good is this information? How much does it cost, for instance? All things which we'll be looking at soon. The knowledge which you have got regarding stakeholder management and engagement. If you have a lot of knowledge on the subject, well, then it's much easier, say, to design strategies because you have got so much knowledge. If you have very little knowledge, then it will be a little bit of a problem. You might not be able to realize your full creative potential when it comes to managing and engaging stakeholders, because a lot of this is about creativity. The more creative you can be, the higher the chances that you can deal with your stakeholders more successfully. Cost and time constraints. Of course, you don't have an unlimited budget, and when you are doing all this stakeholder related management and engagement, well, then you also have to be mindful of how much resources you can invest in that. How much cost can you invest? How much time can you invest? How much effort, energy can you invest, and so forth. Innovation, it means basically what is your capacity for innovation? How innovative can you be with regards to coming up with new strategies, for instance? There could be interfacing taking place with innovation. So you see there are a large number of what I call process framework influencing factors over here. So the quality of your stakeholder management and engagement, whether it's identification, whether it's the quality of identification, the quality of analysis, the quality of evaluation, the quality of strategy design, or the quality of strategy implementation. This depends all to a large extent on all these factors over here. And then, of course, one has the external factors, which one also has to be mindful of. One can't ignore these external factors when one is managing and engaging stakeholders here in connection with this framework. Another box which I have put over here, that is the PSIS, that is the Project Stakeholder Information System. And you may recall that in this governance model, I had also put here a technical step. Here, this arrow over here, the fourth arrow, technical, Project Stakeholder and Information Communication System. Well, this is where it also comes into play. Of course, it interfaces with all these different areas over here. And information system, when we mention the word information system, communication system, the first thing which comes to mind is some computer or some laptop or some server somewhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be the case. It can also be a manual paper-based system. There's nothing to say it can't be. Of course, nowadays in the information age, in the digital age, it makes more sense to use such systems because they're easier to manage, it's easier to process information, it's easier to find information than it would be, say, if you're looking through files and files of paper. But this is also, one thing which is interfacing here with these different areas. Proactive focus means that you are sort of looking at stakeholders in a forward sense. You're trying to anticipate your stakeholders. You're trying to anticipate their behaviors. You're trying to anticipate their actions. You are really trying to understand them already in a forward looking sense. That is the proactive focus. rather than the reactive focus. The reactive focus would be that, like for example, okay, you have got some stakeholders, and now some stakeholders are raising complaints about your project, that perhaps they were not properly consulted, they were not properly informed, they are feeling a bit left out, and they're not very happy about that. And then you would react to that. You would perhaps go to them and say, apologize, and say, yes, we didn't mean to, sorry about it, it won't happen again, etc., etc., etc. Proactive focus, on the other hand, would already try to anticipate such reactions, and it will already use such anticipatory insights into the development of the strategies, into the designing of the strategies, into the implementation of the strategies. For example, making a proper communication plan based on the specific communication needs or expectations of those stakeholders, so that they would not feel left out and they wouldn't have any need to come and complain. So there is this reactive and proactive focus, and of course good stakeholder management and engagement means that we should be proactive. We should try to prevent fires from taking place rather than being reactive and putting fires out after they have started burning. One other little aspect which I would like to show you over here, which I have put in this box, that is the stakeholder management maturity levels evolution. Now, stakeholder management and engagement, you know, it's not something which is static. It's something which evolves, which changes over time. And even if you look here at this Petro-Canada document, you will see it also finds its reflection over here in this point. Continually improve and refine the stakeholder engagement process to ensure alignment with the changing business environment. So, and this is universally applicable. Stakeholder management and engagement, it evolves, it changes, it improves, it gets modified with new projects, with new programs, with new experiences, with new insights, with new observations. There comes this, you know, lessons learned. How can one improve things in future? How can one make the stakeholder management and engagement more mature? And you can design your own system. It's very much so like in project management. You know, in project management you also have got maturity models. Very basic project management is that you are maybe applying a few processes of project management. A more mature stage would be when you are applying all the known processes of project management. And then another more mature stage would be that you are setting up a PMO, which is providing training, supportive services in project management. And then you can go to an even higher stage where you recognize the need for project management. You are supposed to implement it in the best possible sense, and so forth. So there are different maturity levels of project management, and you can have the same here with stakeholder management. You can have initially basic stakeholder management and engagement, and as you gain more experience over time with your projects in dealing with stakeholders, you get feedback. As I said, all these things, these inputs and experiences and observations, etc. Well, then you can evolve more sophisticated, more refined stakeholder management maturity steps, so that in future your stakeholders are happier, your project is better off because there is a less risk of stakeholders doing something against your project, and so forth. So the process framework, it basically includes all this over here, which is a very large chunk of the activities or of the work relating to managing and engaging stakeholders on a project. And indeed, most of the rest of this course will be spent specifically with these 5 processes over here, as well as discussing some of the elements which are contained over here. Now, last thing which I want to do in today's lecture is I want to go into a little bit about processes, because this is a process framework, and each of these areas over here, process areas, contains potentially a very large number of processes, understanding the context, identifying the stakeholders, analyzing the stakeholders and their impact. This is not just one process, but there could be several processes which are all working together in tandem. And for this I have prepared this illustration for you over here, just to illustrate the central role of processes. And this model applies basically to any process, whether it's a technical process, a managerial process. Here I have made it specifically for stakeholders. So you can see some of the processes which are involved with regards to managing and engaging project stakeholders. It's not a process diagram, that is different, but this is more symbolic. It just wants to show you, all the essential constituting elements of a process and why they are important. Well, as you know, or you should be knowing at this stage, you should have learned about it somewhere else in your educational career. Every process is made up really of three parts. The inputs of the process, the process steps, and the outputs of the process. Now the inputs, they go through these process steps, and through a process of or through a transformation, these inputs which are going through these process steps, they are converted into the outputs which come over here. It's much like in any factory which you might have seen, the ingredients. If you're going into furniture factory, all the ingredients, the wood and the nails and the paint and everything, these are all the inputs. They are all going through a process of transformation, and at the end of the transformation you get your furniture piece, whether it could be let us say this desk, or if it's making hardware, IT hardware, making computer screens, computer monitors, something like this over here, which I'm looking at. Well, then you have again a process, you have all the inputs and they're all combined, and at the end of it you get this product over here. So it's universal, we see it everywhere, although we might not be thinking about it all that much. In the case of stakeholder management and engagement, there are many process inputs. Like for example, over here I have given information documentation is a very important input in stakeholder management and engagement processes. Technology is there. Tools are there, qualitative and quantitative. For example, if you're doing stakeholder analysis and you want to analyze your stakeholders, you can use qualitative or quantitative tools. Outputs of other project management processes. This is important because in project management you have chains of processes. The output of one process then subsequently becomes the input for another process. If you take maybe a feasibility study, for instance, a feasibility report, you conduct a feasibility study, you collect all the information, you process this information, you compile this information. At the end of it you have got a feasibility study, and that feasibility study in itself can become an input in making a project plan. So and then of course the project plan then becomes the input when it comes then to the implementation. So you have all these inputs, outputs, inputs, outputs. Output of one process can become an input of another process, which is why it's very important that one has to ensure that the quality of the outputs is very high. Because if you are, say, building a dam based on a feasibility study or a feasibility report which is faulty, which has got erroneous or wrong information, and you are building that dam, then what's going to happen later on? Means that you might be spending a very large sum of money and you are not getting the outputs or the benefits which you expected. That could be one possible consequence. So one has to see that one has not only got high quality inputs, but one has a very sound process and one has very high quality outputs. All kinds of inputs, material inputs, stakeholder interaction, communication, exchange of insights, exchange of ideas, exchange of knowledge, as well as needs, requests, instructions by maybe clients, by managers, and so forth. All these are inputs. And when it goes through all these process steps, and there can be a few process steps, there can be a very large number of process steps, inputs are transformed into outputs. And you could get here, for example, these are all examples, a project stakeholder register, something which we as a tool of documenting stakeholders, which we will look at. Or you could get a project stakeholder SWOT analysis, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Or you could get a project communication plan, which is a very important ingredient or a very important part of project plans. You could get a project stakeholder map. You could get a project responsibility assignment matrix. You could get a project team charter. You could get a project stakeholder engagement plan. And all kinds of outputs you can get by combining all these inputs, putting them through a well-conceived process, and then getting these outputs over here. And this is essentially what is also taking place over here, understanding the project context. In order to understand the project context, you need various inputs. You need insights, you need experience, you need observation, you need information, for instance. And then you put it through a process here, and then you get your output over here, which could then be, like in a formal document about the project context. The same way over here, identification of all stakeholders. You could put some of these inputs over here. At the end of it, you could get a project stakeholder register, in which you are documenting all the stakeholders you have identified. Or, for example, over here, designing and implementing a project stakeholder management and engagement strategy. If you look at the design aspect of it, well, you can put all these inputs over here, combine them, and then over here you get a project stakeholder engagement plan, which comes out of that. And of course, the quality of the engagement plan depends a lot about the quality of your process. It depends a lot on the quality of your process inputs. That's why I have put some boxes over here. Quality of information, tool effectiveness, stakeholder ability, knowledge, competence, experience, insight, communication, cooperation, coordination. All these are essential ingredients of quality. When you combine all these, then there's a very good chance that you get very good quality inputs. The same way over here, project management uses processes extensively to produce deliverables. These are some of the deliverables over here. Some processes are quite complex and have a high risk of error. If you can do a process more simply, then try and do it. It's not necessary to have a very complex process. More complexity doesn't mean more quality. Actually, it could be the other way around. Because it has become so complex, it could be that some things are being overlooked in favor of others, and you don't have very high quality outputs. That is why process maturity comes into play. Process maturity means that, after you have applied the process many times and you have seen where there are weaknesses in the process, steps which might have some shortcomings, you can modify them through process redesign or maybe process re-engineering and so forth. All this, these are parameters which determine the quality of a process. So this is it's a long story in itself. I don't want to go into it in very great detail over now, but this is just to illustrate to you the importance of processes in project stakeholder management and engagement. Here you have got a whole process framework. This is usually how stakeholder management and engagement is performed. Unfortunately, in many instances, not enough thought is given to this first step over here, which is understanding the project context. And this is very unfortunate because every project is unique. Every project has to be seen in its own context. And there are many differences here. Like a dam building project in Africa is not the same, for instance, as a dam building project in India, or a dam building project in Cambodia, or a dam building project in Peru. There are a lot of contextual differences. It's a different environment, it's a different geography, it's different laws, it's a different culture, it's a different society, maybe even different technology is being used. So one has to see things in its context. One has to look at where the project is being done, and one has to look at the factors specific to that context which can affect the project at that particular location. The same with identification of all project stakeholders. From one of the previous classes, we know that there are different definitions of stakeholders. There are some which are very narrow, there's some which are very broad. And of course, identification will depend on what type of perception you have got, whether you should perceive your stakeholders in a very narrow sense or in a very broad sense. Different organizations have different perceptions. They don't all have the same. So if you were to ask two different organizations, to identify all their stakeholders, you come up with perhaps a very different list, even if it's same project in the same locality being undertaken, maybe even by the same organization. You might find different perceptions within that. And of course, analysis, impact evaluation, and so forth. There are many things which we can say about that, and which we will say in the coming lectures. And I will say, I think this is enough for this lecture here. Please have a very close look at these things, these two slides over here in particular, because we will be referring to them quite a bit in the coming lessons. And thank you very much for your patience, and see you all in the next lecture, lecture number 14, where I will continue talking about this five-step governance model, specifically about the technical and the educational steps. When I talk about the technical step, I would like to look at a project stakeholder information and communication system from a conceptual point of view. And then also I will be looking at some of the educational opportunities which are available. There are not too many degrees we will not be looking at, but we'll be looking at some of the seminars and conferences and workshops. They're in a much larger number. And I will be showing you some of the themes and topics which are being discussed specifically at these events. So thank you very much, and see you all in the next class.